Good morning, my name is Lee Mallon and this is a presentation on preference prompts, which is a system protocol that I've been working on a few projects that I wanted to share with the wider kind of community to get some feedback to see if anyone else thinks it's a good idea, and also just to get some insight, share ideas, etc., etc. So let me just run through what I'm going to go through in this presentation. So I'll give you a bit of background to what the hell I'm talking about, discuss a bit on code first to language first, kind of mindset shift, model communications, what are these preference prompts I'm talking about, what's the exchange protocol between sharing them between human systems, human systems, the security and permissions we have to think about in it, a couple of use cases, and then some contact information if anyone's got any questions or any insight, improvements, etc. Please do get in touch. So first of all, a little bit of background. I've been working in the kind of conversational AI, voice tech space for kind of over 5 years. And the last few years has been a bit of a nuclear winter of the technology. It progressed very quickly. And then we kind of died out and hit a plateau in the industry, mainly because we worked in an intent-based model where you're, in essence, pattern matching what a person says or types to a predetermined list of desired responses. And obviously that is very time-consuming, it's very kind of hit and miss, and you typically have to really iterate it over time to get the right subset of decisions. And then in the last kind of 6 months, we've seen this explosion in the mainstream public domain around large language models, primarily ChatGPT, which is shown the potential shift of natural language processing and conversational AI getting a bit of a rebirth to what it should be and how it should be kind of interacted with from a technology point of view, which is very exciting, but opens up a whole load of new problems and takes us back to step one in some ways with creating systems, but mainly gives us an opportunity to rethink a few things, and one of which is if you're interacting with a chatbot or with a voice assistant or an IVR, there was always this issue that you couldn't basically exchange preferences. You could be authenticated, but then that was difficult because then you do like a fingerprint of someone's voices. You then have to log in on another screen. It just became very complicated. And even if you were authenticated, your Microsoft account, for your Xbox might want to know your card information and your gamer tag name, but it's not going to want to know your shoe size because what's the relevance of that? But this is all information that potentially should be a part of your preferences as a human, which I'll kind of break down in a minute. But I think that what I've learned from all this stuff is there's an appetite and a desire for you as an individual to control your data and have a way for you to share it with different systems and people in a way that is from human to human, but also is from human to system and also from system to human or system to system. But let me expand on that. Okay, so first of all, I think large language models has basically been this trigger in people's brains, as we've seen by it being added to every tool under the sun, that actually we want to integrate with software. We want to interact with software through natural language, and this is provided a mechanic for us to do so. Conventionally, we would build software in a code-first structure, and I believe we're now moving to a language-first structure. And what that means is, if you imagine if you're trying to pull out some information out of a tech stack, you're going to write an API in a code-first environment. In a language-first environment, you're going to scribe the interface for the model to try and extract that information from the system. In a code-first environment, you define the rules. So the rule might be, if x is greater than 10, then do this. In a language-first model, you're going to explain the rules, be it, you don't need to say if inventory is 0, we're sold out, because that's just understood by the language model. But you might say, if inventory is low, i.e. 2 left, alert procurement to order some more items, or it might be when it, if stock is if stock is likely to sell out by Friday based on previous trends, then let procurement know we need to order some more items. These concepts are not massively groundbreaking from the software development space. We've had a standard called behavioral-driven development for a long time, which enables you to write in natural language to describe like user stories and problems using Gherkin kind of templating. But what would happen is that natural language would then get mapped using like regex expressions, etc., into code snippets. And I think what's happening and what we're going to see over the next few years is we won't need to do the mapping to code anymore. The same way that we design architecture for systems and how they all integrate together, that's going to drop dramatically, and we're going to start just training models to basically pull out the information we need. And if you look at these two things, currently we're building, doing 90% code and 10% language, and I think it's going to switch, and we'll do 70% in language and 30% in code. Now, let's just assume that is to be the case. What does that mean in what I'm talking about? So currently, if we think of a human as a human and a system as a conventional Web 2 website app, etc., historically, this is how it would go. The human and the system would basically communicate over an interface or an API. Fine. What we've seen with the likes of ChatGPT has been a human is talking to what I've defined as a digital presence model. Name needs to be dramatically improved, which then talks to a system. So this is basically the digital storefront for the system in the way of ChatGPT is not just a large language model. It has some fine tuning on it. It has trust and safety built into it. It's basically a digital representation of the model that is underneath. The bit that I think has been missing and is coming soon is this concept of a digital doppelganger. So I, as a human, can visit a system and a website and try and search for stuff and things, but that's, in largely a sense, a waste of my time, and I have a very narrow view of what, I can click and browse. The way I think it's going to shift is that as a human, I'm going to talk to a digital twin of myself, defined as a digital doppelganger, and that is then going to do stuff on my behalf. It's going to then talk to a system. It's going to understand the conventional APIs, and it's going to grab the stuff I need. So if I go to a website and there's a chatbot, I would talk to my digital doppelganger and say, I'm returning some items, find out what the return address is. And it will go off to the system and do that. The thing I think is kind of not necessarily utopia, but because I don't think it's that far away, is this last option here, where you have a human talking to their doppelganger, but the doppelganger is then talking to the digital presence model, which is talking to the system. So that could be something like, and I break it down a bit further in the presentation, but that would be, I say to my doppelganger, hey, I want to buy some flowers for my wife. It then knows my preferences. It then might go speak to my wife's doppelganger to find out what flowers and stuff she's into, though I should know this. And then it will then talk to the digital presence model of a flower provider, which will then talk to a conventional booking system to then deliver the flowers. And this is how I kind of see in a more, not just LLMs, because they're just more the big hype at the moment and the buzzword of the mainstream, but more in natural language conversation and communication between systems. This is how I see this is going to flow. So now let's break this down as to if this is how it works, like what are we actually sending in these communication paths? And this is where this concept of preference prompts comes in. So you may have experienced, if you go to ChatGPT, you can ask it things. The data set runs out, kind of, I think it was August 2021, but you can correct it. So it'll say, well, who's the CEO of this company? You can change it, and then if you ask it again, it will remember. What if you could do that in your own language model about you as an individual? So you can say stuff that, you can train this model that potentially sits on your phone, sits within your own conclave, And you can build up this digital doppelganger that knows you, knows your preferences, knows what you like and don't like, and then it can then go off and do these things on your behalf, be it more factual information like your birthday, the year you were born, stuff that's time sensitive. This is where I currently live. This is my current shoe size. On a Friday, I normally go for a run. To stuff that's a preference. When I go to a restaurant, I will normally order a burger, or I will normally have this drink. These are just preferences that basically the model will learn over time by you inputting them in a passive way, or with an intent, or they come as a byproduct of your interaction in the digital world. And so you've got these prompts that you then have to be like, okay, well, how do we get them into this communication channel, and how do we basically engage with systems and tools that can utilize them? And that works kind of like this. So if you imagine as a user, I'm a human, I visit a website. The website basically on the preference exchange protocol, to anyone that comes, any system, any agent, any human, on the protocol port or API, it will always say hello. It will basically fire a greeting. If it doesn't get anything back, then it can assume that user or entity isn't embracing PEP. But if it does say hello and it gets an acknowledgement back, which could be hi, could be bonjour, could be anything, it's then down to the vendor, the business, to then basically say what is. So in this case, it's saying it's an e-commerce website that sells shoes. And that's our first stage of our preference exchange protocol. So this establishes that there is a desire to exchange preferences and information. Now, after that point, there's a few different ways it could play out. So the first one is it just says that it sells shoes. The second option here is basically saying, yeah, I sell shoes, but I like if you want to buy something. It's a bit more kind of like a bit more salesy. And then the third one is saying, yeah, I sell shoes, but do you want some assistance to find the correct shoe for you? Yeah, a bit more of an Apple play. Now, depending on what the website basically prompts the human, or in this more likely case, the digital doppelganger, because this is all happening as the website's loading, it can then get many different responses. And again, all in natural language, not predetermined. It could say, I'm looking for a new pair of running trainers, because prior to visiting this website, I was chatting to my digital doppelganger saying, I need to get some new trainers. And it's gone, cool, shall I just take you to our website to get them? And then it's taken them, done this exchange, and then etc. This one here, where it's saying, are you looking to buy something for yourself? There's an intent there, prompt. And again, my digital doppelganger said, yep. It knows I'm size 11 shoes. And it knows because this has already been in my preference prompts, but I've told it prior to this redirection to the website that I need something in 4 days. So it's basically amalgamated them together and going, yep, he says 11 and he needs something delivered in 4 days. Or the other one here is if, it's just basically, look, I just went on this website, I'm not trying to find anything, I'm just looking for some inspiration. So how does this then work as a flow? So user visits website says hello, user says, and when I say user, I mean digital doppelganger, says hi, the website then says, yeah, I'm e-commerce, you're looking to buy something. Doppelganger says, yeah, this is my information. Website says, cool, you need something in 4 days, therefore I need to know where I'm delivering to. Doppelganger says, yeah, here's my address. It's an apartment, so I require tracking delivery. At this point, it could be like, we don't have to track in. That can be then fed back to me as a human. That tracking information could be established because I've told my digital doppelganger, or it's established it from the last 4 orders I made to that address. I had to reorder and the reason was because they got nicked because no one signed for it. The website then, understanding my size, my delivery term, is then like, is there any brand styles you're into, so I can customize the 10,000 different shoes I have. And again, it is pulled from my preference prompts. When he's running, he wears Nike, but that's about it. But what that means is, in the milliseconds that this is taken for this exchange between the digital presence model and my digital doppelganger, The website then loads, and it knows, without me even being logged in, that it should show shoes for size 11. It should show stuff that's in stock and can be delivered to a London address in 4 days. That though I'm not particularly looking for Nike running trainers, maybe the hero image ad on the homepage is there for only Nike running trainers. So I can still browse the website accordingly, but if it is running trainers I'm after, then I'm going to get straight to what I need. And if you want to take that a whole other level, maybe that hero image of that image has been completely generated generatively, and therefore that training doesn't even exist. So if I then tap into it, there's a pre-register for me to sign up to say, yeah, I'd like that's cool. And when it gets 1,000, it then orders them and then tells my digital doppelganger that shoe's now been created. Do I want to purchase it at a later date? I know. So with all this information in this exchange protocol, it opens up, the quite a big question. And I would love to chat to some people who work within GDPR and security, because we've kind of, though we have hacks and breaches of data all the time, we've kind of become accustomed now to username passwords, passwordless, two-factor authentication, using things like Apple ID to obfuscate our email addresses, etc. If we start to shift to more of this natural language conversational large language model world, and we do in fact start to store a digital doppelganger of our presence inside of this entity, this exposes a lot of our personal information, if not correctly restricted or trained to prevent prompt hijacking to extract information. Very simple form. We've got PII, we've got passport, passport number, health records, etc. You've got traits that you're into. I always go to bed at 9 p.m. because that's when my phone goes down, or all the lights go off in the house, or it could be preferences of, if I go to a restaurant, I'm going to go to this restaurant. All this information, though, is helpful for me to utilize in purchase decisions or in doing activities, is also information that can be extracted from my model for nefarious reasons, for data, identity theft, or where is Lee going to be next Thursday? Oh, he's not at home. Okay, so security and permissions around data, around digital doppelgangers, and around the your digital twin opens up some quite interesting future problems. And I would love to chat to people working in GDPR and data kind of security space to expand on this a bit further. But let's just go with a view of taking security and permissions into account. How could that work in the preference exchange protocol flow? And luckily, here's one I made earlier. It can work kind of as follows. So here, user doppelganger visits the website, says hello, does the exchange. For this particular digital doppelganger, there's now 3 variants we've just done of how me as a human has told my doppelganger to behave and interact with stuff that's new. So in this case, this scenario said, look, be on guard of anything new. This one said, prompt me if anything personal wants to be shared. And here we're taking a view of, and I'll come to this in a future presentation in more detail, but if I'm visiting into a website that's being generated or massively morphed based on my personal preferences and doesn't really store anything, then you can tell it what it wants, because it's not going to persist any of that data beyond the session of our interaction. And what's going to happen then is my doppelganger is basically taking all this stuff, understands what my desire is for sharing, and then it's going to prompt me as a human and say, shoeing with this website wants to talk to the doppelganger. It's an econ website that does this. Give me a brief information. You haven't spoken to it before. What can the doppelganger say? And then, and then it's down to you as a human to then, depending on what you've set as a precedent, you can then override it. You can further funnel it in, tell it anything to get the right product, only share this delivery address, or, whatever. The opportunities are really endless. So if we take, this concept of a language first, the concept of preference prompts, of preference exchange protocol, the security permissions, what does that look like in some actual use cases? And I've got two examples here, very simple, but just to kind of hopefully fire it home. If I went to a website to complain or ask for a status of an order, I could be chatting to a human or a digital presence model. Let's just say it's a very early on relationship between me and my digital doppelganger, so it doesn't really know too much about me. So therefore it's going to be prompting me a lot for input into this exchange. So here what's happening is I've gone to this website, the chatbot, the website said, yeah, I've got a chatbot. It's done its preference exchange, and my digital doppelganger's just gone and told it, look, he's going to want to complain about an order that hasn't happened. We don't need any pleasantries, let's just get straight to the point. If there's any issues around postage returns or anything, if it's under £6, he's happy to pay it. There might be an exchange of interaction between the digital doppelganger, oh man, that was a bad word to pick, and the digital presence model, and then occasionally things might pop up and say, there's an input from me as a human. So I might initiate this conversation like, doppelganger, please go ahead and try and find out where my order is, for example. They can see any purchase history related to them. You can provide them with a tokenized payment link for a refund. And then maybe then the doppelganger will, yeah, cool, I've got it. I'll push notification you when there's some more information that I need you to input. A secondary one, very touching on the shoe website area. I land into a website. I'm not just telling my shoe size because they sell clothes in this case. So I tell it everything. I'm like, here's my jean size, my shoe size, my preference for material, some like personal like information about me. Like I walk a lot in the rain, so if I'm going to get shoes, it's going to be more boots than it is going to be like sandals. But also like then loads a website, and that the interaction between me and my doppelganger and the doppelganger and the digital presence model doesn't then stop. I might then browse this website, and as it's happening, I'm dropping notes to my digital doppelganger to say, oh, that brown is really nice. And it knows what I'm looking at, so it knows that brown, and then it will hold it both for the context of this interaction on this website, but also other stuff I may do in the future. I can then initiate, like I just said on the previous use case, something like, I don't know on this website if I order, want some trainers, not sure which size is going to fit me. If I order 2 sizes and I'm going to get stung on, returning one of the sizes, I can then send a message to my digital document and say, look, as it says here, if I order 2 sizes, is there going to be any problem? My doppelganger is then going to communicate with the website. It might get the answer straight away. It might need to wait for it because someone human has to do confirmation. It could be that the doppelganger talks to the digital presence model. The model's like, no idea. Please call customer service. So then the doppelganger uses like Google Duplex, calls customer service, asks the same question, by which time I've left the website. So then it basically fires me a push notification and says, spoke to them, they said it's cool, do you want me to process the order? Yes, it then goes ahead and does what it needs to. Or comes back and says, actually, if you do want to return it, costs £10, which is over the £6 you said you're happy to spend on returns. Do you want me to still continue? So you get this kind of more asynchronous purchase behavior, which I think, though is quite kind of out there, is pretty awesome, and I think it's where it's going to eventually go. So this is just a bit of a quick wrap up of how all this stuff I see working, and I would love to get some feedback from my fellow peers in the industry. Please email me, website, comment on this post, DM on LinkedIn. I'd love to have a chat around security, around the models, around the naming. If you can think of something better than digital presence model, that'd be perfect. But I think there's something there. I'm using this already, and yeah, I want to see where it goes. Thanks very much for your time, and have a great day.